So just who are the dumbest people in politics? That's tough to answer, but on the conservative side of the aisle, it's relatively easy. It's the people who advise Republicans to steer clear of the culture wars, but advocate cuts to Social Security and Medicare. It's people like Brad Polumbo. Polumbo, a mid-20-somethings Gen Z pundit, is out recently with an op-ed in the Washington Examiner, saying that GOP proposals protecting people from acts of consumer fraud, like so-called sex change procedures, are going too far. These proposals are outrageous, Brad says. The idea that the government has the right to tell people what to do with their own bodies is beyond absurd. Even if you think it's wrong to transition in general, freedom has to include the right of other people to do things you don't like, so long as they're not hurting anyone else. I have a question for you, Brad. Is the doctor performing double mastectomies and hysterectomies of little girls, normally functioning healthy body parts, making money off of them, is she hurting anyone? Is the endocrinologist who prescribes the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones that render children and adults infertile for the rest of their lives, is he hurting anyone? And how about the big billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies that market this stuff to kids illegally? Are they hurting anyone? Of course, we all know the answer to these questions, and so does Brad. But what Brad probably doesn't know is that he and the pundits that advocate for giving up the culture war are simply just playing their part as the controlled opposition. These laws are not intended to target gender-confused people. They are meant to eliminate the ability of doctors, hospitals, and big pharmaceutical companies from exploiting vulnerable people. Any objective person of goodwill can see this. What Brad also doesn't realize is that the explosion of transgenderism is the direct result of government policies. Through federal agencies, bureaucrats, and diversity, inclusion, and equity programs, woke activists have changed the rules to essentially force transgenderism into our classrooms, hospitals, and insurance coverage. That's right. Not only are we all paying for transgender surgeries and procedures with our tax dollars through Obamacare subsidies, we're all paying for it through our health insurance premiums as well. Transgenderism didn't explode until people didn't have to pay out of pocket for their procedures and hormones. It didn't explode until taxpayers funded it and all of our insurance premiums paid for it by government mandate. But Polumbo's opposition to protecting vulnerable people isn't what makes him stupid. It's that pundits like him argue with a straight face that opposition to sex changes is too far and unpopular and wrong, while simultaneously advocating for cuts to Social Security and Medicare. Not only do millions of seniors rely on Social Security and Medicare, they paid into it for their entire lives. They are owed just compensation regardless of the betrayal of Washington politicians. But let's just pretend for a second that Brad actually did support making these programs solvent, is sterilizing an entire generation of Americans, preventing them from having their own children, the future taxpayers that will pay into Social Security and Medicare. Is that really the way to go about it? We have a population implosion, and our $31 trillion in debt is going to be a lot harder to pay off with fewer people living in America. It doesn't take much thought to realize this glaring problem. Is Brad a bad guy? Probably not. He's just young and doesn't realize that there are a few things more annoying than the unoriginal political opinions of 20-year-olds.